Welcome to the Tech and Teaching Podcast, where we give you the tips, tricks, and drop general knowledge bombs on how your school can improve your live stream or podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for the notification so you know when the next episode drops. I'm Eric. That's Jordan. You know us. So today we're talking about multicam switching and how your broadcast at your school can go next level. But Jordan, there's a problem.
Yeah, and it's actually a pretty big problem.
Yes.
For the most part, we've seen that schools probably don't know how to do that.
Yes.
Or, if you have the equipment and you just don't have the knowledge or experience of how to use everything in conjunction with each other, or if you're just kind of wondering, like, what does it take to pull off a multicam setup? This is going to be the video series for you,
And it is a series.
It'll be a series.
It's gonna be a series.
We have quite a few videos here, but in this show we're gonna talk about the equipment that is needed, and then we're gonna define the roles of the crew as you expand to get more people. But then in the upcoming videos, we're going to cover like camera locations for the various sports, the purpose of the different camera angles and what shots to get, the communication of the crew, how they should be talking with each other and working together to create a really nice broadcast. And then last but not least, Eric and I are going to break down a segment of an ESPN football broadcast. So there's a lot of fun stuff in the upcoming future.
Roll the opener. All right, George, so let's go over the equipment that we need for the multicam, because it is a lot more than just, we have another camera. We're it's not quite that easy. And we should preface this with what we kind of already said. We're going from we're thinking about, or we already have the equipment, we think, to go from one camera to multicam, and we're doing a production now. So we're not just adding one camera, we're going to a production. We've seen the big stuff. We want to do the big stuff. How do we do that?
Yeah, right. And yeah, as you kind of alluded to, it's not just getting another camera, because unfortunately there's more than just, you're not going to handhold everything. So the main things we're going to need are, you're going to need a switcher. How are you going to cut between the different camera angles that you want to get? Then you're going to need the cameras to actually capture the video.
It's very important.
But then with the cameras, you're going to need a tripod. You're going to need a zoom controller, field monitors, cables to go from the camera to the switcher, or wireless transmitters. However you want to do that medium, you need that. You also need the extra people, the manpower to run the stuff. Then with switchers, you're going to need extra peripherals, monitors, extra cables, power cables, all that whole gamut of stuff. And then so you have everything we just said. It requires much more time to set up. So that's another thing, that if you're thinking about getting into a multicam setup, you need more time, more setup time. There's ways to negate that by putting stuff together and kind of making a system or a box or whatever. But then time and space.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the kind of the main components, and we've talked about a large, as far as the equipment side, a large majority of that already in previous videos. So you could go back and check those out. But the principles we're going to cover now and through the end of this kind of series are going to be very universal for whatever kind of equipment you have. So it's not really brand specific.
Right. There's the cool thing is there's a lot of variety. So you might start and you might get into it and say, well, we need like a 4-input switcher. And then you say, you know what, we've got some more ideas. We've got some more cameras. We could do some different stuff. We're ready for 8 inputs. If you want to go, NFL Super Bowl broadcast, you're talking about 75 or 100 different cameras that need to come into the same system. You're actually talking about multiple banks of switchers, and your director that we're going to talk about here in a second is actually when he says, give me camera 42, well, that's that guy over there, but give me camera 3, well, that's that guy over there, and it's two different people pushing buttons. Anyway, so yes, it does take some more space, and it definitely takes a lot more time. If you are a school used to setting up in 10 minutes before tip-off of a basketball game, if you want a multicam production, that's not going to work.
That has come and gone, and you can do a lot of things with 3 cameras. Even 2 cameras. That's a good place to start. But time, it's going to take that.
Yeah, and space you're adding an entire another person sitting at the table. At a minimum, you're adding a person with a monitor in front of them and a keyboard and the actual switcher itself.
Right.
So you're adding space. You're adding all of that stuff. We want to go in now to the roles and the definition of those roles. We're going to get in a later video. We'll talk more about kind of the specifics of the roles, but we want to give you the general overview. We talked about the stuff that you need. Here's the roles that you need to fill and you need to start to think about. And the first one is the director, and in some cases it'll be a technical director. When we get to our video breakdown of the ESPN video, we'll talk more about the difference between the two. But essentially your director and or your technical director, they're in charge of the visual aspects of the broadcast, whether you are talking about a football game, volleyball, you're talking about a concert. Your director is the person that is in charge of communicating with the cameras and what the cameras should see. They are the ones, they need to have kind of the picture in their mind that they want the broadcast to look like. Again, whatever broadcast it happens to be. Typically, when it gets into, especially when we get into game action or within that concert, whatever it is, it's the director that's really leading the broadcast. They are the ones talking the most, doing the most communication.
They're going to be the storytellers basically, and they're going to kind of tell all the actors, so to speak, how we're going to do it. So there's they are kind of the almost the big cheese here, of they're telling people what to do and what he would like to see. Am I on the right line?
Absolutely. There? And so that is the director role. And what you'll find is that in a smaller setup, the director is not just communicating with the cameras, but they're the ones actually pushing the buttons on the switcher to cut to the different cameras. If you get a bigger situation like the one that we will have when we break down the ESPN video, you'll actually have a technical director, and their job is to physically push the buttons. They're the ones with the board in front of them. They have made sure that audio is coming in the right way, that they know which button is for the right graphics. They know where all the camera buttons are. They know their transitions. And so they're locked in to making it look correct while their director is telling them what to compose, essentially. It is kind of how that works. Again, though, in that smaller setting and a smaller number of people working, the director and the technical director can be one and the same. Okay. But they're also going to work alongside an executive producer or a director. And again, this kind of goes a little bit how many people you have set up. But your executive producer is really kind of overseeing the entirety of the broadcast. So if the director is really in charge of what we see camera-wise, the executive producer is in charge of everything. They are making sure that the audio elements are the correct ones and that we are bringing in the right things at the right time. They are in charge of working with the announcers on, hey, what are some storylines that you as announcers want to talk about so that I could tell them, our graphics people, this is what we need to build out. They're the ones in charge of what does the scoreboard look like. That would be an executive producer role. What design of the scoreboard are you using? All of that kind of stuff. They really are the overall head cheese, but once you get into the actual broadcast, they're not communicating as much because the director has kind of taken over the storytelling at that point.
Okay.
There's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that executive producer is doing before and to a certain extent after a broadcast.
Would the executive producer kind of be in charge of like maybe what if you have advertising, what ads are going to be played for that broadcast, or kind of like what are some of those behind the scenes tasks?
So some of those behind the scenes tasks, like we said, it's getting in touch. It's getting in touch with the announcers. Hey, what are some storylines that you want to talk about during this game? Hey, the coach is going for career win number 200. Okay, well, we need to know that ahead of time so that we could tell a graphic design artist, hey, we need a nice lower third, or we need a slide out. That's a storyline that we want to talk about throughout the games. Maybe there's some highlight games that we want to mention. All right, so there's something. And we want to talk with the audio people. Hey, is there anything that we need audio-wise, a piece of equipment? There was a cable that was old fuzzy last time. Have we checked that? They're making sure that the people in charge of audio, the people in charge of the cameras, the people in charge of the directing have what they need to do their jobs.
Okay, so they're in the scenario, like they're a supporting role for that aspect, so that he knows everything's gonna, or she is gonna know everything's gonna be taken care of.
Yep, and in a lot of schools, if you're doing this right, if you will, it probably should be that teacher role is accepting the role of the executive producer, not doing so much during a game, but making sure everybody understands what their role is before the broadcast starts, understand and making sure that the equipment is right, making sure that this is okay. Perhaps they have talked to the head coaches ahead of time and said, hey, we'd like to do a halftime interview with one of you and a post-game interview with one of your players. Just want to make you guys aware of that. That's the role of the executive producer, is to make that connection ahead of time so that you can say, hey, our floor announcer is going to come grab you on the way to the locker room, and we're going to do a quick interview. That's the executive producer's role, to do a lot of that stuff. On the kind of the next step down, it's kind of a half step down. This could be the producer role. Sometimes it's a network person. We'll talk about that in the ESPN broadcast, but this is the person who, in most Striv school setups, that's the person running Wirecast. So kind of the way a lot of this would work is your director would be running the switcher. They'd be looking at the multicam of the actual cameras, and our producer would be running Wirecast. So maybe not necessarily running scoreboard, but possibly, again, depending on the number of students you have involved. But they're the ones in charge of, when are we showing a graphic? When is that graphic going away? When are we going to commercial break? What commercials are we playing? They're the ones running Wirecast. I call them the producer because they're really kind of the end-all, be-all as far as what the viewer sees and hears. The producer is kind of that last line of defense, if you will. If something happens with multiple cameras, we lose the multicam, we got to be ready on Wirecast or OBS or whatever software you're using. You have to be ready to show something else to cover that up, to allow your producer your executive producer and director and camera people to figure out what just happened. And then you're the one that can bring them back and go, okay, now it's your show again. For a little bit, I had to take over, though. That sort of thing. So that's kind of the producer role. Announcers, that's the announcers, right? That's the voices that we hear. We've talked about those. We've talked about their importance. But it is important that your announcers understand what the director and executive producer want to do and show. And it's also important that your executive producer and director understand what the announcers want to say, what they want to talk about. All the announcers are different. Everybody's going to have a little different way of viewing a game. And so if an announcer notices that, hey, coach is extra animated tonight, there needs to be some understanding with the director that, hey, our floor camera needs to show coach a little bit more. For whatever reason, he's a little amped up, and the announcers have mentioned that. So let's show that too. That's the beauty of video. We get to see that, right? Another role, and it doesn't get filled as often. It's usually one of the. It's more of an entry level kind of role, but it could be a very important role. And when we talk about the high school setting, could be a great introductory role, and that's stage manager. Stage manager in a broadcast booth, they're in charge of making sure that the announcers They have their water or their coffee, whatever they're drinking, that all of the monitors for stats or replay, whatever all of that's working. Do they need a live read? Well, they're the ones actually handing the piece of paper to the announcers.
Okay.
They're also making sure nobody comes in that broadcast booth and messes up what the announcers are saying, because nobody else should be in there. So they don't have an active role for the actual broadcast, but they're the extra set of hands to make sure, hey, somebody needs a battery. Boom, that's stage manager. Hey, somebody needs a announcer's dying over here. He's got a cough. Now he needs a bottle of water. Boom, I'm heading to the concession stand, grabbing a bottle of water. That's a stage manager, and that's where, like I said, it could be a great introductory, because you could still have the headset on. You could still be listening into what the crew is talking about. You just don't really have that role. You could also be the scoreboard operator as a stage manager. Not necessarily, again, have a big role, but hey, something still to do. And then, of course, kind of the last but a very important piece of the puzzle, certainly don't want to diminish this, is the camera people. You need people that understand how to operate the camera. They have to understand what is a crash zoom and how to avoid it. We've talked about that. What is pan? What is tilt? No, not every camera movement is pan. Everybody that doesn't operate a camera, that's the one term they know. Pan. Pan up, pan down? No, you don't pan up and pan down. You tilt up, you tilt down. Do you move? Do you truck? Do you dolly? Do you slide? If you have no idea what I just said, you need to learn that before you become a camera operator. Those are the kind of things that those camera people need to do, because ultimately, if they mess up on the camera shot, it doesn't really matter what our director is doing. If our director's on camera 3 and camera 3's camera falls to the ground, everybody's going to see that. Nobody's going to want to see that too. So please don't do that. That's the roles, Jordan. So we've talked about the stuff, and we've talked about the roles, probably a little bit too much. We'll talk more about those. So that's really it for this episode, but I do want to invite all of you watching this to join us for our Striv EDU Summer Workshop. June 5th is what we're looking at, Holta Center in York, Nebraska. A full day, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Usually in the summer, we only go in the morning, but nope, we're doing this one a little bit bigger, a little more stuff involved. This Striv EDU Summer Workshop is going to bring together broadcasting, tech, and business teachers, so it's a little different audience. We're going to bring everybody together to connect, learn, and grow so that you can transform your classroom into a future-ready learning environment. Many big words. We're very excited about this. A lot of new stuff coming out. We've got a link to the details, actually, to the summer workshop in the description of this video, so make sure you click on that link. You can register there, too. We would love to see you. And like we said, expanding our audience for the summer workshop. We're excited about that, too. So until next time, thanks for watching. The next one coming up, we're going to talk camera locations and the main roles of what those are. So stick with us on the Tech and Teaching Podcast. That's Jordan. I'm Eric. Thanks for watching.